Greetings YouTube, it's Alan and I'm back. And this video I wanted to do a classic constructed tier list. The road to national season is, well, by the time you're watching this video, will start basically this weekend. And these are going to be my expectations for what the meta will look like. And let's just get right into it. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe. And just remember, these are just my opinions. I'm not saying this is like the truth or anything. So if you have any disagreements, be sure to just write them down below, and I'm completely open to changing my mind. But let's start out with just going in order of alphabetical. Azalea, probably not going to do much this meta as per usual. I think she still needs quite a bit of help. I think she can definitely, in the hands of the right pilot, do certain decently well, but she suffers from the fact that her best matchup Chain is no longer in the meta. So let's go right along to Bravo. I think Bravo gains a lot this meta, specifically because Chain and Starvo are gone. Those were definitely two hard matchups for him. So I would say overall his matchup spread into most characters and heroes are really good, except he just obviously has a time struggling with Prism, but other than that, I think he's in a really solid spot. Briar, I think, is definitely going to be really strong and really popular early on. A lot of people already have her built, and she just has like that aggressive package that is not easy, but is very proactive and can definitely, I wouldn't say like warp the meta, but she's going to be a very large consideration about how you build your deck and what to expect in Road to Nationals. Going on to Dash, I would probably put Dash in B tier. It's one of those weird things where it's like I feel as though Dash also has like a pretty decent matchup spread overall. The only issue is that like Dash is almost like too fair. Like she doesn't have any like hard winning matchups or hard losing matchups. She's like good overall, but not, I would say, not quite as good as like some of the characters in A tier. Dorinthia, I think, is going to be an A tier. Glistening Steel Blade is such a powerful card. It helps her race against aggro decks, and versus like mid-range decks like Bravo and stuff. She always like has a pretty decent time with like Steel Blade shunts and a lot of tools. There's a lot of things that Dorinthia can do, and I think she's just in a solid A tier. Kano, I would probably put in C tier. I don't think he has gained much. He definitely did well in the Pro Tour and in some Pro Quests, and even top excuse me, even top aided at the Battle Hardened in Las Vegas. But I think the fact that Oasis Respite has come out and people are somewhat more prepared for Arcane Barrier will mean that Kano probably won't see too many good results early on. I feel like Kano is good when the meta has settled and people stop running Null Rune, and then that's when Kano comes in. But in the beginning of a season, decks aren't probably tuned to perfection, and they probably have a lot of slots to like add in Null Rune here or there. So I think he's probably in C tier. Katsu, I would put in B tier. I think he just he got a decent amount of tools in the new set with things like Take the Tempo, Double Strike. But I think like compared to Briar and even compared to Fi, I would say he's like a little below them. He in terms of aggro and straight damage, I think Katsu can be pretty good, especially with like mass triggers and surgings and his hero ability. But I think he just isn't quite there yet. But I could be wrong on this one. He could be like A tier. Like Dash and Katsu, I think are like at the top of B tier, I would say. And going on to Lexi, I think Lexi is like really, really strong. She's like another one of those situations where she has like a pretty solid matchup spread overall. She like dunks on all the aggro characters, but she can have some issues into the Guardians, but it's not like it's a auto lose matchup or anything, especially in the hands of a skilled pilot, I would say. So I would think Lexi is really strong. She might even go up to S tier, but I think just the inherent problems of Lexi of things like, bricking your hands, not drawing an arrow, or is very prone to disruption overall, like puts her down into A tier. Levia, I'd probably also put into C tier. We've seen some success with like Mansant playing the Bone Basher build at ProQuest Season 2, which is honestly kind of just like a Reinhardt build with Hungering Slaughter Beast, I'm pretty sure. So I don't think Levia really adds much to the meta, but I don't think she's like at the bottom per se. Oldham, I think, is S tier. Oasis Respite is definitely something spicy that Oldham lists might run, especially because they have one floating a lot when they crown and rampart. I think into all the like aggressive decks or even the mid range decks, he can like outvalue or just attrition them out as usual. I think Briar definitely has potential to still beat Oldhim, especially with huge like channel mount heroic turns. But I think overall Oldhim still probably has like a slightly favored slash favored winning matchup into most aggro decks. And then against like mid range decks like Dory and Bravo, they could just play like quote unquote like an honest game and just go 50 minutes, I guess. Against Lexi, he can block out, and I think it's like up to Lexi to sort of overcome the wall that's Oldhim. So I think Oldhim is S tier, not necessarily because I think he will like win a lot of events, but just like what he does is like so important to build around depending on who you're playing that he's like he's just one of the most powerful at what he does. Prism, same situation, one of the best at what she does. She struggles against aggro and go wide decks, but for the most part she can dunk on things like Bravo, Dory. Against most Lexis, she will probably have like a very favored matchup. It's a pretty hard matchup to play, I would say, as Lexi, but I think overall, just Prism just has too much things going for her. And even though she has a losing matchup into like the aggro decks, just the fact that she can still win if she sideboards in like Red Heralds and also hits the Arc Light on important turns. Like it's not an auto lose compared to like something like a Guardian into Prism. And moving on to Rhinar, I guess I would put Rhinar in B, maybe C, maybe like the bottom of B. I think he just has a little bit more going for him than Levia does, but at the same time, not too much. Mm, he didn't really get too much. He got like the what is it? The classic battles cards like Pack Call and stuff like that. But I guess I'll put him in low B. This is maybe it's a little copium. He probably might be C, but I'll put him in low B for now. Moving on to Bolton, I'll put Bolton in D. So this is like a take that's like more personal to me. Like I think Bolton will win more events than all these characters in C and D, but I think just that Bolton himself is not a good hero. He just needs too much. His combo sabers Bolton can definitely like win an event if you high roll, but it's like sure, but I don't think it's very. I don't think it's a good game plan. Like I think you're better off playing most of the other heroes in the game if you want to consistently do well rather than rely on just hitting your one combo. Viserai, I think, is in B tier also. Um, in terms of like all of the aggro decks, he's probably in the worst spot ever since they banned Skeletor. But that doesn't mean he can't do well versus things like Prism and stuff like that. If he hits Tome the Arknight, he can have really explosive turns. So I think he's just B. I think he's good, but I don't expect him to move up too much. Dromai, D for Dromai. I from what I've seen and what I've tested, I think Dromai is very. She doesn't have much going for her right now, which is kind of an issue. But at the same time, I have heard, I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard that there are definitely people out there who have been doing well with Dromai. So after week one, I definitely expect like some list to come out and maybe people will test more and she might move up to like B or A or something like that. But just from what I've seen and what I've tested, it seems super hard into Dromai. She has like, from what I've seen, very little winning matchups other than maybe Icelander. But like that's about it really. Kano can probably still kill her fast enough with Wildfire, but we'll see. Moving on to Icelander, I think Icelander is also in C tier. So I think Icelander has a lot of potential. She has OTK plans into more defensive decks like Oldhim and even Bravo if they're defensive. And she obviously can tempo out versus the aggro decks and just disrupt them. But from what I've noticed, she can't. It's hard for her to do both. Like back then in ProQuest Season 1, when Viserai could either go aggro tempo or OTK, like it was pretty solid what those decks can do in either matchups versus like Starbo or versus Prism. And so I kind of expect that Icelander might be able to do the same. But so far I haven't been able to see it. I don't think she's necessarily favored into any of the matchups if you build her a certain if you build her to have both strategies. I do think she can possibly do well if you like metagame your local meta, and if like there's like 20 Oldhams there and you just OTK all of them, or if there's 20 Briars and Phis there and you just tempo out all of them. I think she can probably do pretty well. But for now, I think she's quite a tough puzzle to solve. So for now, I'll put her in C. But I think she could definitely move up to B within like a week or two as people figure her out. And then Fi, I'm also putting him in S tier. I think just from the testing I've done and from the other testing like my friends have seen, is just he's just so fast, and I feel like I think he's the fastest aggro deck, but he is the most prone to things like disruption from like Oldhim or Bravo or Lexi, for example. So I think this is another one of those situations where you can definitely target Fi, but just what he does by himself is so proactive and powerful that he can push out other decks really easily, and has a like probably very high winning matchup into Prism. Um, can push out all the other aggro decks. I think Fi is faster than Briar. Fi is faster than Katsu. Fi can probably outrace Kano. Probably just races Dash and Reinar, things like that. So, and Reinar always struggled against aggro decks, so that's kind of a given. But I would say these are like my tiers. Before ordering the S tier, I think is kind of hard because it's kind of like a triangle where like the aggros beat Prism, Prism beats the Oldhim is favored into the aggros. I would say the aggro decks, Vi and Briar, are probably the strongest just because they have a good matchup into Prism, but I don't think their matchup into Oldhim is like an auto lose. Whereas I feel like Oldhim into Prism is basically an auto lose. So I would say like I would probably order it like this. Fi and Briar, you can argue which one's better. I'm probably gonna go with Fi just because I'm biased, but it doesn't matter too much in my opinion. A tier, I would probably also order like this. I think Lexi just has one of the best matchup spreads out of any hero in the game, but she just has like some issues that can be difficult to deal with. As Yuki says, Lexi can feel like you're playing the best deck, and then you whiff on one turn, and all of a sudden she's the worst deck. Bravo, same situation, has a very good matchup spread overall. Can flex between defending and disrupting very easily. Of course, loses to Prism, but that's a given. Dory, same thing, or not same thing per se, but has a good matchup into like most heroes in the game except Prism, and she can definitely outrace the aggro decks if she draws like her Glistening Steel Blades and things like that. Moving on to B, Dash and Katsu, I would say are somewhat interchangeable in terms of order. I would say Viserai is probably close after, and then Reinar. Icelander, Kano, Levia, probably my order, and then for the D tier, this is probably my order: Bolton, Dromai, Azalea. And yeah, Dromai can definitely move up, but just from the testing that I've done personally and from what I've seen, she doesn't seem to be good so far. But I definitely think there are people out there who are cracking her puzzle, and she might definitely move up to like A or something in the next few weeks. So yeah, this is what I expect to be good in the Road to National season. These are very much first impressions. I have not played against or as a lot of these heroes, but I've done a decent amount of testing and seen a decent amount of opinions, and this is just my opinion overall. And so yeah, let me know what you guys think. If you have any comments or disagree with anything I said, be sure to let me know down below. I may or may not update this tier list as the Road to National seasons progresses, but for the most part, I'll probably just continue posting like things like deck text, gameplay, things like that. And so, yeah, that's it. See ya.